Hey everybody, and welcome to a NetAssassin demonstration video. In this how-to video, we're actually going to show you how to set up a mobile IPSEC VPN client utilizing PFSense as your home firewall and your VPN concentrator. The way that we are going to be setting this up is so that it is an all-inclusive, in other words, not a split tunnel VPN. And the reason that we're setting it up this way and that we're giving the demonstration this way is because we're trying to create a privacy tunnel, an all-inclusive tunnel, so that if somebody's using their iPhone, for example, and they are at a public hotspot or in a hotel or traveling around, they can utilize this tunnel to hide and obfuscate all of their data into that tunnel. And therefore not utilize the hotel network to include things like DNS lookups, which is very important. So that being said, that is the reason some of these settings are being set the way they are in the rest of this video. If you have questions on how to split the tunnel or do alternative settings, please put it in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. This is a brand new install of PFSense. There's nothing really configured on this PFSense except for a LAN and a WAN connection, which I have aptly named LAN and WAN for simplicity's sake. You can see that the firewall's only been running for about an hour and 38 minutes, and it's actually running inside of a virtual machine. So that being said, let's go ahead and get through this setup. There's going to be several stages. The first stage will actually be enabling mobile client IPSEC support. The next will be creating phase 1 of our IPSEC tunnel, which is the phase that is utilized to establish the encryption and authentication methodologies. Then we will establish phase 2, which is the phase that grants and explains to the tunnel on both the client and the server side what traffic goes in and out of the tunnel. In other words, what are the sources and destinations that are viable for that tunnel. And like I said, we will be incorporating all traffic into this tunnel, which makes it somewhat simple. And then we will be creating a user account because you, after all, do need to authenticate to the VPN concentrator. So I will show you how to create a user account properly so that it will work as a mobile client VPN, as a mobile VPN client account. And then last but not least, we will actually be setting the access control list on the VPN, which is of course how we are going to go ahead and allow the traffic through the tunnel. Even though we've established what may route through on phase 2, we still need to create an access control list, since this is, after all, a firewall that allows, and of course at that point you could go through procedures and like curtail down what somebody could do. But for right now, we're going to do an all open, all-inclusive VPN tunnel. So here we go. To start with, we're going to hop on over to the VPN configuration. We're going to go into IPSEC. We're going to go over to mobile clients, and you're going to enable the IPSEC mobile client support. The next thing that you have to do is choose an authentication method. Now, if you had others set up, and like I said, this is a brand new, very simple, straightforward home setup of PFSense, you may yourself have LDAP, Active Directory, Radius, and so forth added to your PFSense. In our case, I'm trying to be representative of a power user at home, and we have a local database. You must click and highlight it. If you had multiples, you could click and highlight all those different ones, and it would actually go in order to each of those devices that you've configured and try to find the username and password match. In our case, just local database. We're going to leave group authentication set to none. This is perfect for us because, again, I'm doing an all-inclusive tunnel, and I'm actually going to handle the group portion of what the client considers a group in phase 2 of our IPSEC tunnel. So a little foreshadowing. Client configuration. This is called the virtual address pool. It actually means the IPv4 address pool that you'll be handing out. The one rule that you need to understand for both this and the IPv6 address pool is that the pool that you're going to be handing out may not overlap, I repeat, may not overlap any IP address pool or range or scope that you have already set up on the device. So for that purpose, I'm going to create a new range entirely on my network, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that as a 24-bit subnet. Create yours as you wish. For simplicity's sake, if you really don't understand IP subnetting, Pick a range that's not the range of your current machine, your current firewall. Your home firewall is probably already a 24-bit subnet, so using another one will help you in preventing an overlap. IPv6, again, I'm doing this for a typical home network, so I'm not even going to turn this on because most home users are not using IPv6 at this time. Network list, we again don't need to check this box because I'm going to eventually make this tunnel all-inclusive. Normally we might do this if we were only doing some subnets or some specific hosts through the VPN tunnel. In our case it will be all-inclusive, so we can just leave that alone. Save XAuth password is a great setting. This allows the mobile client to save the password and not bother the user every time that they try to authenticate into the tunnel. Because again, I'm doing this for a home type situation where it might be my young son who's trying to create the VPN and I want to encourage him to do that. I'm going to make the barrier to entry a little bit easier for him and allow him to save the password on his iPhone, and I'm going to tick that box. If I was doing this for a corporate network, I probably would not do this because I actually want to force the person to authenticate every time. DNS default domain is great. You can do that here. In my case, I'm going to put my local home DNS name in here, and I love the autocorrect. Split DNS, we are not going to split the DNS on purpose because we, after all, wish to use this for privacy and security. DNS servers, I'm going to provide my actual DNS server to the clients when they establish a connection. So basically, if you kind of are following along and understanding what we're doing here, we're somewhat creating a DHCP scope, right? We've said this is the range of addresses to hand out. We've said this is the default domain name that you should append if somebody uses a short machine name instead of an FQDN. And we've said these are the DNS servers that you should utilize to resolve things. If I was running a Windows environment and I had WINS servers, I would enable this and provide the WINS information. Again, typical home network, probably not running a WINS server. Phase 2 PFS group, which is a pre-shared key group, we are again going to leave this as off because this overrides all mobile phase 2 settings, and we are actually going to create that in our phase 2. And the reason you want this off is maybe you want to have different phase 2s which set up different scopes. So maybe I want Joe and Mary to have one particular scope which is like all-inclusive, but my buddy Steve, I really only want him to gain access to one specific machine on my network and not everything. I trust him, but I don't trust him all that much. So I'm going to create a separate phase 2 for him. And I get that flexibility by doing it in different phase 2 groups, and if I was to check this, it kind of overrides everybody and throws everybody into one bucket. Login banner. I like to enable this just simply to let the person know that the connection has been made, or more importantly, it allows me to know that the connection has been made if I'm the one using it, or if I'm trying to test it over the phone. Okay, welcome, and you are now safe to surf the internet, and we click save. This has now gone through, and we've basically now done the first step. We have gone through and we've created the mobile client connectivity, and now we must go and create phase 1 of our VPN. Luckily, the user interface says, hey, would you like to create it? And we're going to say, yes, we would, and we are in, and I'm going to go through this section pretty quick because there's not a lot to do in here. We can go ahead and skip all the top stuff because really key exchange, internet protocol being IPv4, and our interface being our WAN interface are exactly what we want. Just some notes for you. If you wish to go to V2, that's fine, but most systems aren't going to support it as clients. V1 is perfectly secure. We are using IPv4 as the internet protocol for this particular firewall. And if you had a more complex PFSense where you had multiple external interfaces and you wanted your VPN concentrator to be on a different interface, you might want to select that at this time. We, like I said, only have two, a WAN and a LAN. I'm going to leave it on WAN. And I might want to enter a description, and I might want to call this VPN concentrator endpoint. Phase 1, we are going to change from mutual pre-shared key to mutual pre-shared key plus XAuth, and I'll explain why later when we make the user account. Negotiation mode, please leave it on aggressive. Aggressive is much more secure than the alternative, which is main. Main is just lighter and easier on the clients. We don't have to worry about that with modern computers. My identifier, meaning the identifier for this end of the tunnel, is its IP address. That's perfectly fine to leave that way, and I highly recommend that you do so unless you don't have a static IP. In that case, you're going to want to set something else. But for the most part, my IP address works perfectly fine, and I should reiterate, even if you don't have a static IP, this is perfectly fine. It will simply be the IP address of the machine at the time that you connect. Peer identifier. This is important to change. You have a distinguished name and a user distinguished name. User distinguished name literally means like name at domain. In our case, we're going to go with distinguished name because that allows us to create a name more indicative of a group. In this case, I'm just going to call it monkeys. Pre-shared key is the group password, since the peer identifier is actually the quote-unquote group name that you will eventually put into your client. In this case, the pre-shared key, we're going to do something fun like maybe let me in. So now we're done. Remember what this is, remember what this is. You're going to use them later when you configure your client. And of course, make the password as long and as complex as you would like, and the peer identifier can be anything that you wish after you set it to distinguished name. For phase 1 encryption, this is all absolutely perfectly fine. AES 256 is more than secure enough. Hash algorithm set to SHA-1 is perfectly fine. Your DH key at 1024-bit is also perfectly fine. The lifetime is absolutely fine. The only thing I would absolutely change on this are these two things. NAT traversal I would set to force, and this is going to really help you if you are behind either a single or multiple layered NAT firewalls, which could happen especially if you're at a convention and so forth. And then the dead peer connections, because again of the way I'm trying to use this, I will set this higher. If I was doing a simple site-to-site IPSEC VPN, I would leave this at 10 seconds. I'm actually going to set this to 90 seconds with 5 retries. Let's go ahead and click Save. That is now done, and you will notice we now have, under our tunnels, a phase 1 for mobile clients for our VPN concentrator endpoint, but you'll notice there's no phase 2. So we're going to click plus, and then we're going to go ahead and create one really fast. Again, while phase 1 established how we're going to do our encryption protocol and our authentication, phase 2 is all about what does this tunnel connect to. So we're going to go ahead and leave our tunnel as IPv4. Local network. This is not very well documented, but this is literally telling the mobile client what traffic to send into the tunnel. That is defined as the local network of the concentrator, and we are configuring the concentrator. In our case, we want everything to come through this address. So we're going to set the dropdown to network, and then we are going to set the address to the IPv4 signature authentication for anything and everything. We're going to go ahead and leave NAT bind left to none, and then we're going to say send us everything. Phase 2 proposal. You can leave this exactly as it is set up. It's perfectly fine. And click Save. You have now finished and created all that you need to enable mobile clients, which was this phase, and turn on the tunnels. The only thing that's left for you to do, or in other words, we've created the tunnels, is to actually turn it on. We'll click Enable IPSEC and then click Save. Then we have to say Apply Changes. Now your VPN application is running, it's listening on the WAN port, and it's listening for this phase 1 and phase 2 pieces are running within the system. The next thing that we have to do is create a user account. So we'll go over to System, and then down to User Manager. You'll notice, again, this is a brand new install of PFSense. There's only an admin account. Let's create a new one. Our new user is simply going to be named Joe. Joe's password can be whatever we want it to be. We might want to put a full name for Joe. And if you wish to have an expiration date, you can put that in there. Don't add Joe to admins unless you really want him to be able to mess around with your firewall. And leave this alone. The IPSEC pre-shared key at this lower location is not needed because earlier during the setup we told it to use the local authentication with XAuth. XAuth will use the username and password up here and not something down here, so you can just leave this completely blank. Go ahead and click Save. We actually now need to go back in and edit Joe's account. The reason being, you'll notice a new field now exists, and that is the effective privileges field, which wasn't here when we were creating the account. You're going to have to click the plus, and then you're going to give him the effective privileges of User VPN IPSEC XAuth dial-in. Highlight that one and click Save. You'll notice it has now been added to his account. Click Save again. And if you are like me and a little bit OCD about this, you can click and just make sure that that has actually been added to his account. Congratulations, we've now created an account for Joe, and Joe can now log into the VPN as Joe with the password that we had originally set, and he has been given access to the VPN mobile clients. The last thing that we need to do is go create a firewall rule. In other words, we still need to tell the firewall what to do when somebody creates a VPN connection. You'll notice there's a new tab for interfaces, because before I only created WAN and LAN, but now there's an IPSEC tab. And you'll also notice there are no rules. So let's go ahead and create one. Again, my intent for this is that if you're on the road, you can send anything and everything for the LAN and for the internet through this tunnel, and it works. So to create that rule, it's pretty darn simple. Our action is going to be to pass. Our interface is the IPSEC interface. Our TCP/IP version will be IPv4, but our protocol will be set to any, because I wish to have any protocol come through this. Our source may be anything, our destination may be anything. We would like to log the packets because we're not idiots, and we'd like to be able to eventually look in the logs and see what's going on, and our description might be something like all the things. And that is it. Click Save, and then click Apply. Congratulations, you now have mobile IPSEC VPN that is completely compatible with Cisco IPSEC VPN clients, such as that in iOS and OS X and Linux. And you have access controls and user accounts. Please use this, enjoy it, and try to maintain your privacy.